Do you feel, are you good with how you look?
I feel good.
Okay.
Yes,
Sweet.
I won't look at it, but yes, I feel fine.
That's where I was at. I was trying to change the lights.
Welcome back, Daria Devlin. You're my first, besides Grant here, you were my first repeat guest.
Oh.
I'm very excited to have you back on.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Now I feel pressure, but that's okay. It'll be
Don't
great.
feel any pressure.
Great.
I'm super excited to have you on because, as I mentioned in the intro, you just won your primary.
I did.
For the mayorship of Erie. I voted for you. I will come right out and say that. I think I said it already, but
well, thank you.
Yes, very proud to vote for you. And it kind of leads me into the first thing that I want to talk to you about, which is I looked at this primary back in the winter, and I saw two good people running for this office. And so that's when you kind of have to, on my Facebook on the day of the primary, I said, primary day is where you decide between good and better. And I was impressed with you. I was impressed with the race that you ran.
Thank you.
You focused on the issues. You drove an economic message home. And you wrote a really great op-ed, which I have pulled up here. And one of the things that stood out to me is at the very beginning, you say, I'm running against one of the good guys.
Yes.
How do you decide it's time to step up? Because you talk about how scary it is to step up and run for office. What is it that makes you decide, okay, it's time, and I think I'm the person to do this?
Yeah. So thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Really happy to have this conversation. And I love how you said that about your comment on primary day, like good or better. How lucky are we that was the choice?
Yeah.
Because that's not always the choice,
Right.
right? So, gosh, really lucky here in Erie to have had that. And yes, Joe Schember, such a good man. I mean, by all accounts, a very good man. And that made my decision really difficult. And I did struggle with it. And I talked about that struggle. But really what it came down to, and I said this to a couple groups since the election, I just love our city so much. And I believe in it so deeply that when I looked at City Hall, I just didn't feel that the leadership was there to meet the moment we were in. And I really believe Erie is in a moment. And, where we're coming up on a moment, like we're having a thing here. And I just looked at that and said, good man, good work, but fine is just not good enough for me right now.
Yeah.
We got to take it to the next level. And I didn't believe that Mayor Schember was the person to do that. And to be quite frank, as humbling as it is and as overwhelming as it feels, I feel like I can be, and I have a lot to learn, but I really believe I'm coming at this with the right attitude and the right desire to meet the moment for Erie.
And I think that's what I saw, that's reflected in how you were out talking to people. I think when you have a primary challenger, it can sometimes be grievance or
Yes.
all negative, or we're focusing on the other person and who they are rather than the record. And there's a couple of things that you said in there that I could probably go on about. But when I thought of Daria for mayor, the campaign in the primary.
You thought purple. No, I'm just teasing.
I did.
Yes. There was clear
That's
branding.
good. Clear branding.
Which is also symbolic, unity.
Mhm.
But I thought economic issues, budget,
Yes.
and you were a straight talker. The walk and talk series, the things you were putting on social media, it was all very, very focused. And I'm wondering if you think, I'm not going national here, but I'm wondering if you think there's a lesson to be learned here in how we communicate as a party.
Well, I mean, I will say, I am not afraid of hard conversations. And
Yeah.
I think as a party, as a community, as humans, like, we can't be afraid of hard conversations. And I think people really respect and like that. And I think we might have talked about it last time I was here, but I've seen some things that like Pete Buttigieg has done where he's just like sat down with people who really disagree. And he's like, let's just talk this out. And it's direct and it's respectful, but it's not cowering, like it's being
Right.
clear. And I do feel that when we have issues that are difficult and hard to talk about, that meeting them, like just coming right at it and saying, how do we talk about this together? I do think that this is how we move things forward. So grateful you saw that in our campaign.
Yeah.
Certainly, that's how we're going to move Erie forward, for sure.
And I actually had a follow-up for that where I saw from you and something that I respected from it. And Kyle and I talk about it all the time that, the Democratic Party is a really big tent and it's
Yes.
really big.
Yes.
Something that I saw from you is you were able to connect and correlate a bunch of different interest groups to be on your side. So you had like Erie County United, which some people would consider left wing. You had you had people who are more corporate, quote unquote, corporate Democrats. You had people who are suburban moms who are coming out to vote for you. How did you connect the dots to, because your message, in my opinion, isn't an ideology. It's not ideology. I'm so sorry.
You're good.
So it's not that. It's more of a straightforward, straight shooting question. How did you do that in your mind?
Yeah, I mean, it was a little difficult in the campaign because even, to your point, Kyle, we wanted to be positive, right? And I wanted to run on this idea of like energy and leadership, but those things are like very vague and pretty ephemeral, and it's hard for people to be like, okay, what do you really think though? And so we had to kind of walk that line. And I think, you saw it when we came out pretty strongly in the budget conversation where we were like, okay, now we have to differentiate ourselves. Now we have to talk about an issue that people can understand. Now, that particular topic was tough because, to your point, like you have a really large group of people who are at different points in the continuum of understanding issues like that. And so, one of the values, and I really want to give a shout out to Lori Spicer, who was my campaign manager. Like our first meeting, Lori's like, let's set our values. And like, let's revisit those values all the time. And like that centered us all the time. So our values were about inclusion. Like we need to be able to bring these messages to as many people as we can. We need to be able to have as many conversations as we can. And I think that's how we got there with so many different groups. And, Erie County United was a great example. I know that they had concerns about me when we started, and I don't blame them. Like they didn't really know me. So I also relied on my own political capital and those of others. I really leaned on folks to say, will you stand next to me in this conversation and at least let them know like she's worth listening to and let them be open to that. And we did that, I think, across the board. I had surrogates. You can't do this alone.
Right.
You build trust. And then you have surrogates, and you have the hope that those surrogates will help you build trust and go on and on from there. And I do think that there's a real lesson in that, for sure.
That's awesome.
Totally. And you had a lot of enthusiasm online as well. One of the things that you talked about, though, again, bringing it back to the budget, is one of the things that I admired about your it's ongoing. The election is in November.
No, correct.
It's so easy as Democrats to go straight to, and again, talking nationally, it's so easy to just go to Trump. You weren't talking about Trump. You were talking about local issues that impacted people day to day. You made it very clear. You made it very understandable. I mean, how much of that is innate? How much of that do you have to sit down and really like work through?
So can I like share some secrets now? Now that it's past us, we had like an ongoing battle about this issue with our team, and not with our campaign team here in Erie. We did have some consultants that we hired, and one of our consultants was not local, and they kept hammering us that we had to talk about Trump. And I'm like, I'm not talking about Trump. And I mean, I'm not kidding you. Poor Lori, I just stopped participating in the calls, and Lori had to just deal with this over and over, but we were adamant. I was okay to say, we'll stand up for our neighbors, which we did talk about. I was okay to say when there are dangerous policies, but I was not going there because I just didn't feel like the citizens of Erie really wanted to have that conversation. We had enough to talk about here. Yeah. We have enough in our own community. I didn't even want to bring that name into it, and it was a battle. Every time they would send us a draft of something, they'd have the name there, and I'm like, nope, we're going to take it off. So I'm telling you now, I appreciate you saying that, because at the time I wasn't sure what the right decision was, but I think we were right in how we dealt with that.
And it's probably, I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. No, and that's something that we talk about a lot, where we're talking federally a lot in our podcast. We're talking about congressional districts and whatnot. And a lot of consultants come in with a copy and paste approach where it's hit Trump, do this, do that. And that's not how you win an election. I know this is Democratic primary, but people want to hear more about what you're going to do for them or what you're going to advocate for, and not necessarily what you're against. And we all should be agreeing on that.
Agree. And they kept saying to us, it's a Democratic primary. You have to talk about this. You have to. And I'm like, well, let me tell you, I'm not, and I mean, honestly think that also goes to like who I am and how I handle things. It was like, no, I'm sorry. We're not going to be talked into this because it doesn't align with the values that we set and we held to.
And it's also about what the office of mayor does.
Right.
Like, I mean, of course, national issues trickle into every semblance of daily life. Right. But, I mean, you're in the mayor's office, and the issues that you're dealing with are not...
Correct.
those lightning rod issues, and if you jump straight to the Trump conversation, you automatically divide.
That's
and
right.
it catches fire.
And that's something that, like, again, like we talk about a lot, which my political philosophy is you got to talk about what you're for, what you're going to do. And I think it's a given that you're running in the Democratic Party. Obviously, you're not probably a Trump voter, obviously.
Correct.
You probably have liberal views on most issues that we care about. But it's a given, right? And seeing this going forward, it was inspiring. I'm using Kyle's words there, where you're focusing on things that are bread and butter to people. It's not abstract. It's not something that people are, getting fired up about, something that's happening in DC or whatever. That's the future of, I think, our party and primaries, where it needs to be more about what we can do for you.
Issues based.
And let me just say, and I said in the campaign, like, city work, it ain't sexy work.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
it is those bread and butter things.
Right.
It's your streets and your trash and, your fire and your police and
Right.
yes, like economic development and, neighborhood revitalization, but it's not those big issues.
Right.
And so I'm not going to get dragged into that. And let me just address it. As you said, Kyle, I have a general to run in
Right.
the fall, and I want to talk about what Erie needs because I want to now at this point I want to go after and really build trust with Schember voters, and I have to build trust with Republican voters. And I think really what we all should be talking about is what's coming for Erie right now.
Future.
Some of that might be related to some federal stuff, and if it is, we'll talk about it. But it's not the core thrust of the conversation.
And you just mentioned Schember voters, which is something I have written down here. Is Erie is a small town. Everybody kind of knows everybody. So you get into this race and you're running against somebody who is well loved and respected and has a lot of friends and family. And now that you've won, a large chunk of those voters are going to come over and support you regardless. But, how do you unify the people who take it personally, maybe that, you came in and said, it's time for change.
And let me add some context here. I lost friends over supporting you. Like, people like
Oh my
who
gosh, I'm so sorry.
no, but like that's what it's crazy to
Lower
me.
friends in quotes.
Friends in quotes, like that's what I mean. Like,
But people
it's,
get,
it's at the end of the day, it's politics. But like, I lost people who I considered my friends, who I've worked with like for many years.
Yeah.
And just because I shared a Facebook post about you.
Yeah, I hear that, and gosh, I'm sorry. But
No.
But
no,
also,
don't be that, because I don't do that to them. That's what I mean.
I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you.
we're
Look,
good.
it is Erie. It's small community.
Yeah.
Like I said this one, I'm like, everybody is connected. Like I was on a campaign or I supported a candidate. I mean, it just happens, right?
Mhm.
So, but here's the thing, like at least for the Schember voters, I'm not talking about Republican voters right now. As Democrats, the right thing to do is to then, try as much as possible to unite behind the candidate.
Right.
And so, on election night, I was very clear to say in my first interviews, it's my job. I have to build trust with those voters now. Now, I can turn around and say, I never said anything personally attacking this man.
Right. Yeah.
Never.
Never.
We went after his policies. We talked about things we would do differently. We never said anything personal. So standing on that now helps, right? Because when you get into mudslinging, now you really have a problem because now you've really hurt people.
Right.
So what I'm hoping now is everybody needs to cool off. It was, it was heated. It's difficult. It's painful. It's emotional. Let all the emotions calm down a little bit, and then just give me an opportunity to say, here's what we're talking about. Here's what the race is about. Can I have your support? And I'll be honest, I'm hoping at some point I have spoken to Mayor Schember. At some point I'd like to ask for his support, and hopefully, he'll be willing to give that. But that would also go a long way. But I am here for that. And as we started, here for the hard conversations, here to hear people say, didn't like what you said there, didn't like how you did that. I want to hear that.
Yeah.
It's good for me as a leader to hear it, and then hopefully be able to build trust back with them. But it's a huge priority of mine right now.
Sweet. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And that's I keep jumping in, but
No,
the thing is that
why you're here.
I love about you as a candidate and just as a leader is that you're straightforward about that.
Yes.
Someone else might, and that's not about Joe Schember or anyone like that, but someone else might be sitting in your chair and being like, well, I'm gonna, like, they're hedging their bets all the time. You answer the questions pretty straightforward. You're going for what people want to hear, and that's something that I keep talking about, where it's like, going into the future, we need people like you who can effectively communicate that message and be able to just cut through the BS, to be honest.
People don't want that. Like,
Right.
they don't want
They
the
hate
BS.
it.
Yeah,
Yep.
they hate it. And it's like what gives us all a bad name.
Right, exactly.
So, yes, let's go direct at it. Again, let's talk about the issues and build the trust.
Yeah.
Awesome. Do you want to ask you, like, your opinion on Democrats kind of historically are terrified of primaries? I think we can be... I think all voters are emotional in some way, but we can be a party, kind of to the point we were just discussing, that reacts with our feelings, and we've been told, XYZ is bad, and so if you were not to have been successful in the primary, there's a worry that maybe the primary challengers does damage to the general election incumbent, and that could have negative effects in the fall. Do you think that there's a lesson to be learned? Do you think that this is a good thing? Because you knew your why, you got in, you ran, and you won. Do you think that we should be seeing this in this moment, and this is more national, but in this moment of change across the country where people are kind of saying good ain't good enough? Do you think that there's a lesson to be learned from races like this?
Yeah. So, I heard early on that there were folks who said Democrats don't run against Democrats, Okay, I hear that. But here's how I'll respond. Number one, we're going to have one of two outcomes. Either we're going to have an outcome where people want change and they will vote for change, as happened here, or what I would hope is my challenging would have made Joe Schember a stronger mayor, would have, and I said this, 3/4 of the way through, it was like, okay, even if we don't win this race, things are being done and talked about that were not otherwise being done and talked about. And that's a win because our citizens deserve our engagement and our attention all the time, not just at election time. So if we're not successful, I don't think it weakens the incumbent.
Yeah.
I think the challenger's job, it's a spar. You make me stronger.
Yeah.
I hope that should be the attitude.
Yeah.
You make me stronger by pushing at me and finding my weak spots. And I learned this lesson. Kathy Dahlkemper said it to me early on. And then really the idea should be you're stronger when you go into the general because you've had that time to really work out those issues and you come in as the strong Democratic candidate. I think that's how we should be thinking about it.
Yeah.
To be honest.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. I mean,
and like that's a great answer, and that's something that we talk about on this podcast a lot, where we see a lot of people challenging incumbents across the board, and it is more federal, but it's local too, with other mayorships and stuff. And oftentimes, again, they're not running on a platform of here's how I'm going to do things better. It's this incumbent's old, or this incumbent is pro-Israel, or this incumbent is da 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 da, and I'm going to take him out. That's something that you did not do.
That's different.
Yeah, you are someone who, again, I don't even think you strengthen the conversation.
And I think that's how it should be.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to speak for Republicans. I'm not in that party. But for us as Democrats, we need our candidates to be as strong as they can be, right?
Yeah.
That's what we want,
Yep.
so that they can perform as well as they can in general elections. And the way you do that, the way you build those muscles is having conversations within your party. And I think that's what we did here.
And can I ask a follow-up with that? And this is
Bring it
just this is about party politics, as we're all members of the same one. Something that I've noticed with the incumbent mayor, and it's not a negative to him, a lot of times people get elected to these high positions and then they're done with the party politic, and then they only come around election time. And that's not an insult to anyone. I get it. The job of governing is hard. Are you planning on staying involved with the party and kind of trying to make more Daria Devlins, in the sense of having supporting candidates who are running the same type of way you are, where it's issues based?
So this is both selfish and generous, right?
Yeah, for sure.
On the selfish side, I mean, it would be great to have like-minded folks who are running for different offices and who can help us move forward agendas and progress and vision. Like, I just think selfishly that makes a lot of sense. On the generous side, as a community, I think we want, and in a place like Erie that is heavily Democratic, I think we need a strong party. I just think that we do. I think we used to have one. I think that's changed a little bit. And there's different ideas about what strength means and what we should be doing. And we should never be keeping people out of running. I agree. But I also think it's helpful to put folks in the right lanes, right? So if you have someone who's fresh and new and they've never run and they're like, I'm running for mayor. Okay. Or have you considered like a school board race where you might,
Yep.
cut your teeth and learn a little bit? Like,
Yeah.
I do think there needs to be a little of that vetting. It's not control, it's just maximizing everybody's potential and having the right people in the right seats at the right
Yep.
times. That's how we really move things forward.
And I can speak, and I'm speaking for me, not you. I want to make that clear to anyone listening. There's a race for county council where there was like 10 people running against an incumbent. And I think if you would narrow that down to 2 people, I think that incumbent would have been defeated.
Yeah,
but
and you
because it's
can't-
spread out.
Right. And I mean, look and I've had these conversations. You can't tell people no. I mean, it's
Absolutely.
everyone's
Yeah.
right,
Right.
to do what they want.
Absolutely.
But if the party shows itself to be a place where people can come and like get advice
Yep.
and start those conversations and there's trust there, then I think it's also be like, well, let's talk that through a little
Yeah.
bit. Here's what we've got going on this year. Here's what we're projecting next year.
Right.
And look, I mean, I Lou Tullio, there's good and bad, and I've heard all kinds of things. My goodness. But what I know is there was the Democratic mayor of Erie, there was a period of time where that person had a pretty strong leadership role in the party.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not trying to take control, but I would like to have that role. And
Absolutely.
to your question, I don't plan to go away. Like
Perfect.
I'll be honest, I owe the party now.
Yeah.
I do feel like I owe the party. They stepped up for me.
Yep.
It's my job now to help with however I can with candidates in this race, candidates in future races, having those conversations. I'm here for that.
Yeah.
And I want that to be a part of my work.
I love that because you're saying, where if you have a mayor of Erie who's sitting on that board and someone says, hey, I want to run for office, and then you can say, oh my gosh, you live in this borough, there's a township race here, you should run for that. Or hey, you should run for city council in 2029 or something like that. Wait your time, but here's the strategy on how we can get you elected instead of running 30 people at once.
Right. For sure.
And I think that makes a really strong case.
And then, we can't ever forget we live in Erie County. Erie County at the state and federal level has become certainly important, so how are we doing our part to make sure that if we're doing what we can for the party at the state and the federal level too? I mean,
Yeah,
I just think we have to
absolutely.
own that and to be a part of that conversation as
Keep
well.
the muscle flexed
yes,
at all times.
At
yeah.
all times.
How did that feel to get the Democratic Party of Erie endorsement? Pretty commandingly too. I mean, that was the vote was not particularly close.
I owe such a debt of gratitude to people who supported me in that. I mean, and there was great discomfort. And what I understood was it wasn't really discomfort about me personally. It was just discomfort about, should this be what the party is doing? And I think, Sam Tallarico's leadership in that to say, look, we just think this is a unique moment and we're gonna stick our necks out here in a way that we haven't in a while. And I think people forget, like, in previous races, the mayor did have the ability to go do the same thing. He was not able to get the majority. And so it wasn't like this was this crazy moment where they came to that vote. No, it had been done prior. He just hadn't been able to get the majority. So I was humbled. I was grateful. And I mean, it really was a moment where I felt like, okay, this is, the party has made a statement. Again, they've stuck their necks out for me. I want to do the same for them. And I think it was also a moment to say, let's strengthen this party again. Let's come together on these issues when we can and really have an impact and be a reminder for future candidates. Don't ignore the party.
Yeah.
Show up for the party too. I mean, that sends that message too. And I think you need both of that.
Yeah.
And I heard it loud and clear, and I intend to make good on that. And I hope other candidates see that as well and get more involved.
I love that.
I think right of the 2010 midterms when I hear that. Again, much more national. But I did also want to ask you, you've been talking about tough conversations and connecting with voters. The last time you were here was February. What did you hear from voters? I mean, I heard your platform, and I'm assuming that was informed by voters, but what was it you were hearing from voters? What were people's concerns?
Yeah, it was encouraging. I think a lot of people asked us if we polled throughout the campaign. We did not. It was too expensive. It was like $10,000. And even at that price point, we were like, is this even reliable data? So really we're advised, and I'm comfortable with that decision. But what that left us was we had to have as many individual conversations. We had to do our own kind of polling.
Yeah.
So it did force us to hit more doors, which I'm glad we did, because that's where those really interesting conversations happened. It was interesting to hear people who just really were like, I think it's time for change. Like just that message just resonated with a lot of people. They couldn't really add specifics to it. It wasn't like there was an issue they were super focused on, but just like, I do think it's time for change. change. We heard a lot about city services. I mean, for God's sake, Daria, can you get my street paved? You know, for God's sake, can we make sure we don't have Snowmageddon again? I heard that over and over again. You know, like different folks in different neighborhoods have different things. You know, I talked to a lot of folks on Green Garden who really were still, you know, upset about the bike lane issue. But it's interesting on that. A lot of that was communication. People really, for the most part, whether it was the Green Garden bike lane or snow or whatever, it's like, if we could just know what was going on, if we could just have good communication, we could get past a lot of the other things. And so that idea of transparency and communication, that also I heard over and over again.
Okay. And I know, Grant, you had a question about that specifically.
I have 2 questions. Well, I don't know if you want to go there. My question is, a lot of times with some of these more potent issues locally, so again, it's not federal or it's not about bathrooms or anything like that. Like, do you have what did you tell that Green Garden voter? Because I remember driving by. I used to live up near there, and I would drive down, and they had their handmade signs on there, being really upset. And like those people, they pay pretty high taxes, I'm sure, and they felt very frustrated by it. Another instance of this would be in the Frontier neighborhood with the Cockwell Bridge. Do you have what did you tell that voter who was frustrated by those things?
Yeah, and I mean, I think in many cases, you know, whether it was, you know, people complaining about code enforcement or people complaining, I really believe that leadership is at the root of a lot of this. And so I would kind of pull it back. Like, I'm not going to tell you right now whether I think there should be a bike lane on Green Garden or there shouldn't be a bike lane on Green Garden. What I will tell you is I think if we're going to do things like that and explore them, we need to do the process better. Like, we need to be talking to the residents. We also need to be, by the way, making sure that when we're talking to the residents and we're hearing what they want, we don't just turn around and do the opposite. Like, those being responsive and communicative, I think that's how we really, code enforcement is another one. You know, you get people in some neighborhoods in the city where they're just so fired up about code enforcement. But when you talk to them and when you realize it's like, no, the people are doing their job. It's just, we're not responsive when you call, you know, Citizens Response Center. We're not telling you the things we're doing. Like, I was in Lancaster this week. They have a dashboard that you put in, you know, this is where my pothole is, and then you can follow the process of when that's getting fixed or not. And it's like, these are just transparency, accountability, and communication issues that I honestly believe would clear up like 75% of the kinds of things. So that's what I did. I tied it back to, would you have felt better if you had been better communicated with? Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay. That I can certainly improve.
Because I think that passed like pre-pandemic to put the bike lane on. And I think they were blindsided by it because it just didn't happen.
And then there was enforcement issues. Like then they were like, then we were told we could park there, but then no one's enforcing. And so again, is what's happening in the mayor's office being communicated down the chain and up the chain, and everybody knows what everybody else is doing? I mean, one thing I have heard already in talking to folks at City Hall, and I've let them know, like, I intend to be a more hands-on mayor. You know, I think there's different styles and nothing against anybody else's. I'm not going to be a micromanager, but I need to know what's happening. And I need to know what we're doing and who's doing what. And I do intend to be a little more hands-on. And I think that can also help.
That's leadership, though. That's perfect. And I have 2 follow-ups to that. My first one, it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. This might be hard because you've talked to probably thousands of people at this point. Do you have any instances in your mind where you talked to someone who maybe didn't know who you were, or were against you, and you maybe convinced them to get on your side? You
know, I have to say, when I was knocking doors, I rarely hit someone who was like aggressively like, no, I won't vote for you.
Yeah.
My team did, and they told me about those instances.
Okay.
I think it's harder for people to look me in the eye and be like, no, I'm not going to vote for you. So I didn't hit that as much. I did certainly in the beginning, Grant, here, you know, I don't know who you are, you know, tell me about yourself.
Yeah, totally.
Great to have that opportunity to do it. And I had people be like, mostly what I'd hear is, you know, he's doing a fine job. I mean, what's the problem? And then that opened the door for me to say, well, yes, but, and have those conversations. So
Which has got to be tricky.
Yeah.
It really,
It is tricky, but I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I think those porch conversations are like the best things that you can do to really connect and hear what people's big concerns are. So yeah, I didn't have to aggressively do that. My team, my husband did. I mean, he'd come home and be like, oh my God, I just, you know, had this conversation. So it did happen. I was a little insulated from it, to be honest.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. It's a lot harder to be a keyboard cowboy.
Yes.
It's a lot easier to be a keyboard cowboy than it is to say it to someone's face.
It's not a cowboy.
Oh, you know what I mean.
We got you. We know.
I love it.
But no, that's awesome. So I have a couple questions. They're based on what you've been doing since the primary. Is that okay, Kyle?
Yeah,
to move
bring
forward?
it.
Yeah. So I as everyone knows who listens and people who know me, I'm really nerdy when it comes to all the data and all that stuff. But something that I saw earlier this week is that you were in Harrisburg talking to, I believe, our delegation and other leaders. I saw Speaker McClinton. And then you were also in Lancaster, Allentown, and I don't know if you talked just those two. Okay, perfect. I was going to say if you talked to Harrisburg too, the city. What did you gain from that? What did you learn from that? And one thing that just really inspired me about that is that we now are going to have a lead. And I know you have a general election, but I think it's going to be
We're going to say it. She's going to win.
You're going to win the general.
Nope,
knock on wood. But my point being is you're out there talking to people. You're making those connections. You're going from – I've been to Allentown. It's awesome. Their mayor is awesome.
He was awesome.
I worked with him in 2022 a lot. What'd you learn? What are you going to do?
Well, first of all, I need to learn a lot. So who better to learn from than folks who are doing these jobs? And so I wanted to create those peer connections, and it was really important. And they were so welcoming. Like they also wanted to have the connection with Erie. So really enjoyed that. So just, quickly in Allentown, I joked, went to Lancaster, and Lancaster's lovely and, very nice. Then I went to Allentown. I'm like, okay, now I feel more at home.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a bigger city, all of that. But Allentown had 125,000 people. Allentown is the third largest city in Pennsylvania. They took that from us in 2000, I think. So I just flat out said to Mayor Turk, what are you doing? What's working here? Talked a lot about how they got there, which is mainly, Hispanic, Latino immigrants, migrants, mainly from New York City, who they actively recruited and who they made successful in their economy. So a lot of lessons there for, I think, Erie. And we kind of joked, we drove past Reading. Reading right now is fourth largest.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Reading, I'm coming for you. I'm not even going to pay attention. I'm not even going to talk to you right now. I mean, teasing, of course. But we're only 2,000 people less than they are. So I think we can get there. But so, yeah, great lesson in Allentown. Both mayors independently talked to me about police chiefs and how important that relationship is to, do a good job there. And then in Lancaster with Mayor Sirachi, she's just gone through Home Rule Charter. And so that was really why I was there, to hear her experience with both Home Rule Charter and CRIS, because, she has both. And so we have, there was some specifics there that were very helpful.
Sweet. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, I was just really I haven't seen that before.
Those were great questions to ask.
I was very excited. I was like, this is what I don't live in the city, but the city is the anchor to our county.
Well, and Mayor Turk in Allentown was like, I'm so excited to have a connection. And he's like, we have a little text chain. It's like Paige is in Scranton, Paige Cognetti. I haven't met her yet. We're connecting
awesome
via
too.
phone. I've heard great things about her. And so there's 5 of them. And he's like, we'll get you on the text thread, And so it's, and just to ask, hey, did you guys get this letter from HUD? Or, hey, what are you guys doing? For me, that's invaluable. That's how
awesome.
I learn. So
having a team of people that you can go to and do the same thing, dealing with the same stuff. And you know what? I'm going to go back to me saying we're going to say it. She's going to win. I'm going to manifest the win.
Thank you, Pal.
That's what I meant to say. Yeah,
Thank
we are not getting ahead of ourselves here. But
thank you.
I feel very good because I again saw the photos that Grant is referring to of you traveling, and I'm like, okay, this is somebody who's going out and actively seeking connection, actively seeking
from towns who are successful. I mean, we're a successful town too. I'm not saying we're not. But from towns who are growing, you know what I mean? And that's something that I was so excited. I was like, let's go. And you got to see the mayor of Allentown, who I love. So I was like, he's the guy. So I was like, I'm very excited.
Thanks.
We're going from a little bit more detailed to a little more vague here. But with the primary happening, there's a lot of women on the ballot.
Yes.
How does that feel? I mean, I think it's really, really cool to see qualified, intelligent, leaders, and they're women, and it's how is that?
Yeah, so it was on election night where we were at my watch party, and it became we were clearly going to win, and I looked around, and Brooke Sanfilippo had come down, and Emily Mirsky had come down, and Chris Rush had come down, and I was like, wow, and of course Christina Vogel, was successful as well, and so there was this realization of it was a sweep, the women. Look, good leaders are everywhere. I mean, I don't want to go too far down that road, but I do think there's something happening right now with folks realizing, things have not been going maybe as well as we would want them to. So let's try this. We do have a reputation for certainly getting things done. I think for being a little more collaborative, being able to work together. I am just over the moon, particularly with the women. We have Marilyn Pohl and Jasmine Flores on city council, ticket. Certainly with Brooke for city controller. I'm really excited to work with her. If Christina is successful, we're going to work with anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm pretty thrilled, to be
Yeah,
quite frank.
that's
And
awesome.
I think I also have to really give a shout out. Kathy Dahlkemper has done a lot of work in this space. There is a PAC, that she created. And so I think the fruits of that are starting to show themselves as well. It didn't happen by accident. There's
Yeah.
been work in this area
Yeah.
for a while.
Sweet.
Yeah. Speaking briefly about Christina Vogel, if she's successful, the Erie mayor is going to have a relationship with the county executive going forward, and whether that's Vogel or Davis could be very different. We just saw the ECRA thing that
Yeah,
happened
it just came
where
back.
The audit.
it was shown,
Yeah.
and so like the city of Erie is owed money. With some of those federal cuts that are happening, how important is that relationship between the mayor and the county executive?
I would tell you that I think the relationship between the mayor and the county executive is always important, should always be there.
Yeah.
And, as much as I might have a preference as to, who will win that race, I have to work with whoever's in that seat.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right.
for us to be to not have a partnership, to not be collaborative, to be in any way, butting up against each other, I think is totally inappropriate. I will say, I said this morning at the chamber, I will be a person who fights for the city of Erie and deals with Erie from a place of strength. So, people can expect that I will be a firm advocate for Erie, and I don't want Erie to be swallowed up by or pushed around by, any other municipality, including the county. And so we will work together, but I will always be serving Erie's, city of Erie's interests first, and hoping that together then we can lead the whole region forward. But I'll work with whoever is in the seat for sure.
So, I mean, in your op-ed, you mentioned Harrisburg. I'm curious to hear what your vision is for your relationship with Governor Shapiro and Harrisburg in general.
Yeah, so great question. I was in Harrisburg this week, but I was thrilled. The morning after the election, I got a call early in the morning from Lieutenant Governor from Austin Davis, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm honored, and I had met him a few weeks prior, and we'd exchanged cell phone numbers, so that was lovely.
Yeah.
And then, 2 hours later, I was in a meeting, and I looked at my phone, and I was like, Josh Shapiro is calling me. This is cool. So, I answered the phone and I was so grateful and honored that he would call. And he said, we're really excited. We followed your campaign, like the way you carried yourself. And he said something really telling to me, which I'm going to hold close, which was, we think Erie is punching below its weight. And we're ready to help Erie in any way we can. And I was like, yes, Governor, I am here for this. Of course we have the CRIS and we're so grateful to our legislators and also the governor for getting us that. But, we need more, we need support. We need to be part of this conversation at the state level. And so I was thrilled to hear that. And then the speaker, Joanna McClinton called me as well. And then I was able to connect with her privately in Harrisburg, and also Jordan Harris, and just these connections. And I sense excitement from people who are like, yes, we can't wait to work more closely with Erie. And so, I think that, do I love the 5-hour drive to Harrisburg? I do not. But will I do it as much as I need to? You betcha. I will be there as much as I need to be.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It's great. Kind of wrapping this up, I love hearing all of this because I love that we have a nominee who is going to go into this general election with that fighting spirit, but who has a vision and who is willing to do the work to make the connections here in Erie, but also across the state.
Yep.
And I'm really, really excited to see how this goes.
Thank you. And if I can say, I want to be very clear. I am the nominee. I have a general ahead of me that I am taking very seriously. I look forward to conversations with Matthew Thomas, my Republican opponent, again, to that point of having conversations, making Erie better. I look forward to all of that. And I will be, we will be actively campaigning. So nothing is taken for granted, and kind of looking forward to that next step as well.
And
we'll be right there with you.
Thank you.
Sweet.
Thanks.
Thank you for coming on.
Absolutely.
Again.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Absolutely.